to the greater community. This show exists to highlight ministries that are happening in creative ways, both locally and globally. And today I'm super excited to have Katie and Meg with us. And they are the proud parents of a brand new ministry. And so Katie and Meg, why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us about the new awesome thing that you're doing?
Well, I'm Meg. This is Katie. She's this way on my screen. I don't know where she is on yours. And we are the proud parents, apparently, of a new ministry called Joy KC. We are a faith-based nonprofit that hosts regular programs for youth ages 15 and up and adults with disabilities in the greater Kansas City area.
And I'm Katie Howard, and I have known Meg for several years. We used to be roommates. And so I kind of jumped in with Meg once I moved to Kansas City, and then she asked me to kind of be a part of Joy KC. And I also am a third grade teacher in the Shawnee Mission School District.
Well, guys, tell me how you got involved in this ministry. Take me back right to the beginning of like what initially stirred your hearts to be just doing ministry to this population.
Yeah, I think for me, my older sister, Kate, has severe autism. And so really from a very young age was really, kind of born into the disability community and really had a strong desire and still have that strong desire to really advocate well for a community that is so often overlooked and unseen. I think similar to Katie, a lot of my professional life has been working with the IDD population. Right now I'm a day service coordinator for adults with disabilities. And so both me and Katie just have a strong passion and heart to just serve this community well. And I think that another platform of doing that has really been through the birth of our ministry. And so it's really exciting.
Yeah, and I got involved in just the special needs community when I was in middle school. I went to a camp called Camp Barnabas where I first started volunteering there, and that's where like my heart for this just became really clear and apparent. So that kind of led me into, I always knew I was going to be a teacher, but then that led me kind of into the more special education direction, getting my degree in that. And since just in college and post-college, really seeing a need for disability ministry in the church and getting them involved within the church. So then that's kind of branched that passion. And that's kind of where it all started, was mainly in middle school.
So Meg, you mentioned that this is kind of an overlooked population within the church. Can you talk about just, what those gaps are? Like what is kind of the really specific needs around this community? Like what is the church missing out on when they're not giving attention to this population?
Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, our target population for Joy KC is specifically geared towards transition-aged youth because especially in the school system, so many social opportunities really decline for these individuals once they exit high school. I think that, as Katie kind of mentioned, there are a lot of different gaps in not knowing how to serve this community. I think that as people, change can be scary, and when we don't have exposure to certain people groups, there can be just barriers. And I think that unfortunately this world just has a lot of negative stigma around people with disabilities and just a lot of outdated perceptions on what they can do and what they can't do. And so I think that our heart is to really have Joy KC just as a place where people are celebrated for being people, right? It's like, no matter if you have a disability or not, you have you're still a person, right? And you still have the same heart, and you still have the same spirit, and you still have the same desire, the basic human need for connection and for friendship. And, and so I think that, I think that in part that's really where I think the church is kind of missing, because I think when we don't have exposure to people groups, sometimes I think that there's a fear there.
And I just think of like before because basically before I went to Camp Barnabas as a middle schooler, I had zero exposure to anyone with a disability or a special need. And I remember going to camp and initially feeling really uncomfortable because I was like, I've never been around, this type of population. I don't know how to interact. I don't know how to treat them, all the things. And just like Meg was saying, like, it was just abundantly clear, it was like, God was like, just treat them like how you would any other person and interact with them and talk with them. And so I think, like, since and I know, Meg would say the same thing, since I've been a part of just this population in general, I have received so much joy. And that's, part of the meaning behind the name of just this population brings out so much joy in all of us. And so I think that is a piece that I always initially think of when I, if someone hasn't ever interacted with someone with a disability, it's like you're missing out on this unique, different type of joy that they bring. That's just kind of unlike anything else. So
yeah, as someone who's been a pastor in a church full time for over 20 years at this point, I know that a lot of times we do church the way we are comfortable doing church. But can you talk a little bit about how are the ways that we kind of normally do church? How are those obstacles for somebody with disabilities? Like what is it about the ways that church is commonly done that makes it difficult for somebody with developmental disabilities?
Well, I think that the important thing to just always keep in mind is disability is incredibly individualized, right? So no two people, even with the exact same diagnosis, experience a disability in the same way. The manifestation of disability looks so different for every person. And so what works for one person may not work for the other person, And so I think that what we've found as we've worked with this population is having lots of platforms for engagement is something that's really important. Just in a church context, in an education context, in a work context, whatever it is, I think having a lot of different ways to engage and present material is really important, is what I would say.
I think some churches or people, it's like every church can't do it all, And so it's like we recognize that not every church is going to have this specialized disability ministry that's this full blown, with all these resources. But I think like what Meg was saying is maybe just having, and this goes with any person, disability or not, but just kind of having like the flexibility to be like, hey, okay, this person might need this kind of accommodation or this kind of resource to help them grow in their relationship with the Lord or grow in relationship with other people. So just kind of having like just be on the lookout for what people, might need. And how can we help serve them in that way?
Yeah, no, I love what Katie was saying too, because I think honestly, the best support that we can ever offer to people is individualized and comes from knowing someone, right? It comes from knowing what ticks them off, having a relationship with them, building that rapport and that trust. And so I think that when we're able to really do that effectively is when we're able to then serve the most effectively, because then we're able to understand that person and the way that they learn and the way that they, come alive with certain activities. So that was just my side note there. We love relationships. So.
Well, and as you're talking, it occurs to me that the idea of being kind of realize it's hard to be clued into everybody's individual needs and perspectives, but it seems like that is kind of a worthy goal for the church in general, to treat people as individuals and try to get to know people's stories rather than just trying to do a one size fits all ministry in the church anyway. So it seems like maybe that's something that a ministry like Joy KC could teach the church as a whole, is just a greater sensitivity to trying to meet individuals where they're at and walk with them in a way that, fits them, rather than always trying to say, come to us and fit our mold, which is, I think typically is how churches sort of by necessity have to function. But also seems like that individual attention is something that churches that do that well, where people feel like they're known and they're understood, is something that benefits the body of Christ as a whole anyway, I would think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's, it's discipleship, like what you're saying, and it might look a little bit different based on who's sitting in front of you, but I do think it is that one-on-one connection. And I also, as you were talking, Tom, I just kept thinking about the value of collaborate. I think that there are certain men and women that we serve that may not be able to advocate for themselves, or maybe do have communication limitations. And so I think then being able to really support and partner and collaborate with their family or their caregiver or people that know them best, so that we can then kind of bridge the gap between us and them, is also a really important thing, I think, that we just have to be doing to best serve this community.
Katie, you mentioned something earlier on about kind of your initial interactions, and I think what you described is probably pretty accurate for a lot of folks, that sometimes people's initial interaction with individuals with disability is intimidation, because you're really just uncomfortable. You're not really sure what to do. And so kind of what advice would you give to individuals who, not just for like the church programmatically, but just for people in general as they encounter individuals with disabilities? Like, what advice would you give them to kind of break through some of the awkwardness, some of the uncomfortableness, to be able to be a more loving people to people with disabilities? What have you learned that you would want to pass on to somebody who's facing that kind of insecurity or anxiety?
No, I think that's a great question. Because a lot of like my close friends and family members who have been a part of other ministries that I've been a part of have asked me like, okay, well, Katie, like do you have any tips? Do you have any advice or whatever? And I just am always like, just treat them like you would anyone else, which is kind of like this broad, okay, well, what does that mean statement? But it really just does mean talk to them like you would talk to someone else you're meeting at a coffee shop or whatever. And I think, part of the fears that people have is you start to notice that person's differences or what they can't do. So I know in particular for me, I remember being at Camp Barnabas, and, it was kind of like my first exposure, and I was around some campers who were nonverbal, so who couldn't communicate like I could. And so then I was fearful. I was like, okay, well, do I ask them questions? Do I talk to them? They can't like respond back to me verbally. And I remember a staff member was like, yes, like still talk to them, like ask them questions, like, and they might not respond in a verbal way, but a lot of the times, it's like they just want to feel and be acknowledged just like anyone else is. So I always just tell people, just treat them like you would anyone else, and their response might be different, or their needs might be different, but like you can still be more comfortable just kind of taking those barriers away and being like, okay, it's just another person, and kind of get to know them and what makes them them. And then the more you spend time with that person or with this population, you become so much more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So
Meg, is that, you kind of mentioned something earlier, the population that's not seen. Is that what you mean by actually of being seen, of actually seeing a population? Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the disability community is one that is often marginalized, is often one that, people overlook. And so I think that really our heart for Joy KC is to create a space where people are seen and are celebrated and are given opportunity for meaningful engagement, are given, authentic relationship. I think that, just working in this population and having a sister with a disability, I think that I've just, I think my heart really breaks for the desire for dignity for these individuals, and for, for their opportunity to meaningfully engage in as, citizens, But yes, I definitely think that these guys are the future kings and queens of heaven, and I think that our unique role on earth is to be able to really best support them in their differences and celebrate who they are in diversity. So
Yeah, and I guess I never thought of ministry to individuals with disabilities as like a justice ministry, but in a way, it really is a justice ministry, because I think a lot of times when people even want to volunteer, they think of like a top down, like this is me and this is the person with disability, I'm going to minister to them. But I feel like the more people that I talk to that have experience in this kind of ministry, as kind of like you guys were talking about, the joy there is a mutual benefit that happens when you're involved in a ministry like this.
Yeah. I've always said that I personally, and this is, I remember saying this as soon as I got home from Camp Barnabas when I was, young, but I remember saying, like, I have never felt closer to the Lord than when I am with this population. And I know that's not, that's different for everyone, but I feel like that they teach me so much, that I am the one receiving all this joy, just by getting to know them. And I mean, Christ really does like shine through them. So I think, yeah, you're totally right.
Can you talk a little bit about that, about how working with this ministry has been part of your personal discipleship journey? Kind of how you feel like you've grown and what you have learned? Is because I think that's something, again, when people want to go be a part of a ministry like this, it's more like, well, it's a sacrificial thing. I'm going to go and do this really significant ministry as like an act of self-sacrifice. But the way you both talk about it, it seems like it's been a big part of your personal formation. So talk a little bit about kind of the benefits that you and the things that you've learned as a result of being a part of this ministry.
Yeah, I know for me personally, I've learned just more about who God is, like his character, and he doesn't make mistakes. And so when he created people, no matter what they look like or what their abilities are, it's not by mistake. Like it is, he has a purpose for everyone. And I think that's been huge. I think thinking of, each person that we meet, no matter what they look like or what they can or can't do, as like an image bearer of God, like this person represents who God is and carries a part of Christ's image. So I just feel like God's used them to teach me a lot about who he is more, and then just more about like my sin and my selfishness, and just kind of breaking parts of when I first was around this population, I was like, oh my gosh, like it just revealed a lot of sin in myself. And then just a lot of like blessings that have come out of just really being in relationship with people with disabilities.
That's good, Katie. Oh, I love that. Yeah, I mean, I think that I have learned so much from my sister, from people that we get to serve in our Joy KC family. Yeah, I mean, I've learned so much from people with disabilities. And I think I just feel super thankful. I have such genuine friendship and connection with these individuals. They make me laugh. They make me think. I think that there is such a testimony of God through the stories that they share. And it truly is a humbling thing. Like it is a humbling thing that I get to do this. And I think that is often what I think is like, this isn't what I have to do. Like I get to do this. And it is so incredibly humbling to partner with the Holy Spirit and to say yes, and to get to draw heaven closer through gatherings like we are going to have at Joy KC. I just think it's a really profound, beautiful thing.
Beautiful was a word that comes to mind, of just this beautiful kind of dance of community and formation. And it seems like, man, churches that aren't involved in this kind of ministry are really missing out on the kingdom of God and its fullness. There's a missing piece that you're really adding with this ministry. Can you talk a little bit then about, we haven't got to talk a lot about the specifics of what you're doing with Joy KC. So talk about how you're being intentional with this vision of Joy KC to meet the needs, but also to kind of develop this community. So yeah, talk a little bit about kind of where did this idea come from and what does it look like? How does it work? Paint the picture for us.
Katie and I both worked with a ministry called Champions for the last 4 years, where we hosted really similar respite nights to what we'll be doing at Joy KC. Champions kind of recently went through a visionary and leadership change, and they actually relocated to Arkansas, which kind of put me and Katie in a position of, okay, well, what is our response, right? Because we no longer can host these regular programs under the umbrella of this ministry that we've been working for 4+ years, and so I think that, through our prayer, through our process, through just covering in community, I think it was super clear that Jesus had a green light on it. And so it's just been a really exciting, beautiful process of really forming our ministry. Honestly, I remember having a conversation with Jesus of like, Lord, like, I am willing to fight for anything, but like, can you make this really clear that this is what's on your heart by making this a really seamless process as we transition to Joy KC from Champions? And honestly, like, it's just blown me away how seamless this has been, and how right it has felt. We have just had so many yeses and so many people in our lives wanting to support and partner with us, including Community Covenant Church, which we're super, super thankful for. So really the expression of Joy KC was really established through a different ministry that we kind of get to be an extension of as Joy KC in Kansas City.
So tell us if we were to, it's Monday nights, correct? Starting in January. So tell us, if we were to stop by on a Monday night, what will we see?
As long as once, COVID goes away, you would see a lot of people together. And there would be, there's volunteers, and there are individuals with disabilities. And a lot of times we kind of run our events based off of themes. So, one event, in February might be a sweetheart dance. There might be another event that's a talent show, or we've just had lots of kind of party event themes. So there will be a theme, and you'll see a lot of people just in kind of stations. A lot of times we do stations with like an activity, a craft. We do like a short time of worship and a message, and play a lot of games. It's really chill. It's really fun. It's just kind of like a camp party in a sense. So
yeah, and I just think something else to note, Katie kind of mentioned volunteers, and so really we utilize a buddy system at Joy KC where we are pairing an individual with a disability with a volunteer, and really like our heart behind that isn't for people to be babysat or watched, but to really promote that relationship piece. There might be some individuals that might have some additional support needs that they might need assistance in, but primarily that person is really there to help the individual engage as maximally as they want with the activities that we have, and to just totally have a blast. And kind of like Katie mentioned, all of our events are free to the community. And so we're really excited to really begin to partner with schools and community providers to really, advertise this event for community members, because we really think that it could be something significant in someone's month that they could look forward to.
And you talked about kind of youth and young adults. Can you talk about kind of the specific segment of the population that you're targeting with this program?
Yeah, so we're kind of targeting ages 15 and up for multiple reasons. Meg kind of touched on this earlier, but there's a lot of resources for kids with disabilities within a school. Like the school systems provide that, a lot of community, there's a lot of community resources, but then there's not a lot of resources once kids, especially individuals, hit 18 and older. And so we, are going to welcome anyone, but our target population is really to best serve those individuals who are, in their teens to adults. And then as far as volunteers, we really, because the relationship piece is so important to us, we really want of like a peer aspect. So we would love, we love when volunteers come who are also in that age range as well, just so that we can pair people up, that just have more in common, at life stage, it's more in common. So
yeah. And so how often is this happening? If there's somebody who's out there that's thinking about maybe being a part of this ministry, how often, when does it happen? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we are hosting our event once a month on the first Monday of every month from 6:30 to 8:30. We do ask volunteers to come at 6. And again, all of this is after COVID, I guess.
Right.
Katie is our volunteer coordinator and does a fantastic job of just really equipping volunteers and debriefing volunteers and just getting them ready to be successful in their roles. We also offer twice a year just a volunteer training. And this is available to, we're really targeting people that might want to volunteer with Joy KC, but also people that maybe want to learn more about disability in general, to really, bridge that gap and to hopefully break down some barriers and some fear there, because we really want people to be successful and comfortable and just to have fun at our events.
So you mentioned before kind of activities and stations. Can you describe the environment? I know that, we hosted Champions, I think a couple summers ago at our church, and I got a little bit of the flavor of it, but describe the atmosphere of one of these nights. What do you envision it feeling like if somebody, walks in to that space? What is it like?
I feel like people can expect a lot of energy, like very high energy, very fun, engaging, like, kind of like we mentioned, there's a lot of games and activities going on. So it's kind of a structured chaos in a way, because there's a structure to every night, but it's just, everyone's so excited to be there. And, a lot of times, since we do these once a month, and volunteers and individuals with disabilities really start to get to know each other, and so everyone's excited to see each other, and there's just a lot of excitement and a lot of noise, but it's really, really fun.
And
we always have music at our events. They're very loud, they're very fun. So I always leave like with sore calves because I'm just like jumping the entire time. So
yeah, maybe that's a good segue for me. What do you hope that the individuals who this is targeted for, that they walk away? What experience do you hope that they've had when they leave that event after each month?
Honestly, I think that a lot of adults with disabilities spend the majority of their time with people who are paid to be there. And so I think my real heart is for them to have a genuine connection and friendship with someone that isn't paid to be there. Not someone that, another person that they have in their social capital that they know and that is in their corner, and that they feel seen by, and that they could maybe look forward to seeing the next month. I think that feeling seen is something that me and Katie really, really want people to feel seen and welcome at our events. And so I think that there's obviously the relationship piece. And then I also think, we're obviously there to have fun, but I also really want to equip people in things that are true. I want to give exposure to who Jesus is. I want people to walk away maybe with scripture in their head or a song in their head, and just a greater understanding of who he is, because that's so why we're doing what we're doing. That was a terrible sentence. Why we're doing what we want to do, whatever. So yeah, I think that, there's the relationship piece of it, but also like we really want to equip people in joy and in truth. And so that's really my heart for it.
What is this might be the wrong way to ask this question, but what would you say is the ideal volunteer? Like, what would you, if you had a dream team of these kinds of individuals, who do you really hope will say yes to being a part of this community and be a volunteer? What qualities do you want to see in somebody who's going to come be a part of this ministry?
I feel like the biggest quality that makes a volunteer just totally stand out and awesome isn't like their age or gender or whatever. It's really just a genuine like effort in trying to get to know their buddy or their team of people who's around them, and engaging. So I think just someone who is engaging with their buddy in a very, and a lot of volunteers who come, it can be their first exposure or they're uncomfortable, but volunteers just always stand out when it's like, oh my gosh, they did such a great job, talking
Mhm.
with their buddy and engaging with them and serving them. So kind of just that quality of kind of being open to being uncomfortable and engaging in it.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot. So I did youth ministry for 17 years, and I know I always did a lot of recruiting of volunteers and stuff. And there was always kind of this idea that people had of, well, I can only be a youth leader if I'm like in my 20s and I have tons of energy and I'm really cool. And I would always say, like, really what is most important is if you can care. If you can care for students and show interest in their lives, that's way more important than being cool or knowing, what their favorite bands are or their favorite music is or what all the pop culture stuff. It was more about just people with a big heart that would be consistently a part of things, that you could count on, that would just be, you wouldn't have to tell them, okay, go do this or go do that, because they would just naturally just want to be alongside,
Right.
students. So it sounds very similar.
And I think, like Katie was saying, it's so not about experience, although that often is something that could help someone be a really good volunteer, but it really is a person that's willing to just dive in and go for it and show up and be brave when they might feel uncomfortable. I think you nailed on the head, Tom, of that's totally who we're really hoping joins our Joy KC family.
So you are currently in the process of recruiting volunteers, or where are you at on kind of your volunteer base going into your launch?
Yeah, so we have had several. So, like Meg said, we are kind of a branch out. Like our ministry kind of started from Champions when they changed directions. So, we're getting several volunteers who have already been a part of these events. So, we have some like former volunteers. We've also, since launching Joy KC, have been just doing some social media advertisement and had like a small, meet and greet fundraiser. And so we have had a lot of several people come up to us and say they want to get involved in some way. So we definitely have a base of some volunteers who want to either continue to get involved or start to get involved, but are always wanting and eager to have more. We really want every individual who comes with a disability to have a buddy that is, like them or just, excited to hang out with them. So our like first volunteer training is coming up December 7th, and it will be virtual. And like Meg said, I will be the one like training them and sending, information via emails out to them. And right now it will look different just because of COVID, but we are super excited to continue to get to know volunteers and equip them in best that we can.
And I think too, like Katie's saying, the more volunteers that we have, ultimately, like the more individuals that we can serve. I think that there's such a ripple effect to our ministry and really what we're doing. Not only are we trying to serve individuals with disabilities, but also this is kind of a family ministry, right? Because if a parent has a safe place to drop off their kid for 2 hours once a month, and that's an awesome way for them to recoup and have a date night or whatever. And so I think that the more volunteers that we have, the more families actually get served as well. So.
And you both mentioned, COVID is a reality that's impacted a lot of ministry. How do you foresee COVID impacting? I know you had kind of pointed towards a January launch. What is it looking like as, we're recording Thanksgiving week of 2020. So what's it looking like? What's your short-term outlook like right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the way that we envisioned launching this. But we are going to be doing events virtually starting January. I think we might do that for a while. It really depends on the state regulations at that time, how COVID is during that time. But I think that we really want to launch regardless in January, no matter what the platform, because we really, there have been individuals for the last 4 years that have really grown to count on us and these regular gatherings. And so we really want to create a space that continues that, even though it's going to look a little bit different. Obviously, we're really excited to meet in person and really want to do that in person, but you know, we might be a little bit delayed there. So
because your population is kind of would be in that at-risk category, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you really want to protect the health of your folks as much as you want to get started and get rolling. You want to do it in a way that's you want to start well, I guess I would say.
Right.
So as you're building steam and you're moving towards your launch, how can people come alongside your ministry right now? Like, how can people support what you're doing? And we talked about volunteering, but are there other ways beyond volunteering that people can be a part of this ministry and support what you're doing?
One very clear way is just to pray for the individuals coming. Pray just that, you know, Meg and I would, especially just in this season of COVID and all the unknowns, just be able to serve this population well. So just prayer for individuals who come, volunteers, that we would have, you know, be sustained and have enough volunteers every event, which we always have, you know, just enough. Like, so prayer is a big one, volunteering, and giving is another way too. It's just, we don't have a large budget, but we do have needs of just in terms of providing resources and the crafts that we do and those types of things at our events to make them really fun. So those are the three things I can think of. Meg, do you have anything else?
No, those are the three that I thought of too. I think that prayer is definitely a big one, like Katie was saying. I think that we really want to navigate this time through COVID well. We want to not only sustain our little Joy KC family, but we also really want to grow. And so we need Jesus and his guidance and direction to really do that well. And yeah, I think just on a practical note, there are financial needs to really continue to make this a free program for individuals in our community. And so yeah, giving, we have a website, www.joykc.org, and there are options for giving on there.
And is there a way, if they want to contact you to ask more about just the ministry or volunteering, is there a way for people to get a hold of you two?
Yeah, so on our website, we both have contact information listed, and also our website just shares more about our story, and you know, more about who we are and what we're wanting to do. And so I recommend checking it out.
Awesome.
Our emails are on there, but they're really simple. It's just my name, Katie, at joykc.org, and same for Meg.
You know, as you have kind of painted the picture in lots of different ways of the need for this ministry and the importance of what you're doing. If there was somebody listening today that maybe they'd never thought about themselves being involved in ministry of individuals with disabilities, or maybe they were kind of like, oh, I'm just interested in listening to this, you know, because it's part of a series, but now their hearts are captured. Like, what would you say to somebody who was like strongly considering, or maybe even casually considering being a part of this? Like, what would you want to say to prospective members of your Joy KC community?
Yeah, I think, you know, we would say go for it. I mean, get involved, reach out to us. I think the beauty of Joy KC is that we do it all together. I mean, all of our events are in a group, and so there's never like, you're never alone. And you know, Meg and I are always there, and it's just yeah, it's just, you just kind of got to jump in with 2 feet, and then I feel like people will want to come back. So
yeah, I think like Katie's saying, we try to really make it a safe environment, right? So for our individuals that come, for our volunteers, we really want to make it a safe place for people to be, for people to learn, for people to be together. But, you know, I would just say, you know, if your heart is being stirred, then that's Jesus speaking to you, and you should go for it. And I think that Jesus often likes putting us in places that we might not always feel comfortable in, or we might not always feel the most secure, but he's with us there. You know, he holds our hand through things that feel uncertain and unpredictable. And so, yeah, go for it. If you're feeling stirred, we'd love to have you.
And then just lastly is you, let's say we're sitting down again a year from now, we're getting to the end of 2021. What do you hope that God will have done through Joy KC over the course of this year coming up? Like, what do you hope happens through what you're doing?
I really hope that we'll be able to have events in person. That's the first thing I thought of. And then, you know, Tom, I have a really strong desire to partner with group homes. I work for a community service provider, and I'm in contact and collaboration with a lot of different community service providers in the area. And I really want men and women who live in residential situations to benefit from Joy KC. That is really my heart, to partner with community service providers to just grow our Joy KC family. So those are things I really want. What about you, Katie?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I definitely second the being in person, and then just growth. I mean, growth in the volunteer aspect, growth for our participants who come, and growth in terms of like the church, you know, being a part of it. Like, there's members from the church body coming and you know, building those relationships every month. So,
well, thanks so much for taking the time to come and have a conversation today. It, to me, takes a ton of courage to, I think when I first sat down with you, you know, way back early at the beginning of this year, you said, we want to create a 501c3, you know, so to have that kind of vision and passion to say, we're going to kind of start something brand new, and we're going to be the ones that do it. And just the effort, and, we've all of us in ministry have had to pivot in 2020 as we've kind of had to grapple with all the changes with the coronavirus, but to see your determination to serve a community that, you know, the church is overlooked is huge. And so I just want to say that, you know, we are excited to have the privilege to be able to host your in-person gatherings whenever that does occur. We're very thankful that you have been partnering with us in this, and we're excited to see how God works. And so for all of you who've been watching and listening, we want to thank you also as well for joining us. We do want to encourage you to subscribe to this channel, whether it's a podcast or whether you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe so you can catch up on all the great ministries happening, just like what Meg and Katie are doing through Joy KC. God is doing a lot of great work. So we'll see you next time as we continue to learn what God is doing both locally and globally through his greater community. We'll see you next time.